The Chalukya dynasty was an Indian royal dynasty that ruled large parts of southern and central India between the 6th and the 12th centuries. During this period, they ruled as three related yet individual dynasties. The earliest dynasty, known as the Badami Chalukyas, ruled from Vartupi from the middle of the 6th century. The Badami Chalukyas began to assert their independence at the decline of the Kadamba kingdom of Banavasia and rapidly rose to prominence during the reign of Mlpkr II. After the death of Mlpkr II, the Eastern Chalukyas became an independent kingdom in the eastern Deccan. They ruled from Vengi until about the 11th century. In the western Deccan, the rise of the Rashtrakutas in the middle of the 8th century eclipsed the Chalukyas of Badami before being revived by their descendants, the Western Chalukyas, in the late 10th century. These Western Chalukyas ruled from Kalyani until the end of the 12th century. The rule of the Chalukyas marks an important milestone in the history of South India and a golden age in the history of Karnataka. The political atmosphere in South India shifted from smaller kingdoms to large empires with the ascendancy of Badami Chalukyas. A southern India-based kingdom took control and consolidated the entire region between the Kaveri and the Narmada rivers. The rise of this empire saw the birth of efficient administration, overseas trade and commerce, and the development of new style of architecture called Chalukyan architecture. Kannada literature, which had enjoyed royal support in the 9th century Rashtrakuta court, found eager patronage from the Western Chalukyas in the Jain and Virashaiva traditions. The 11th century saw the birth of Telugu literature under the patronage of the Eastern Chalukyas. Origins. Natives of Karnataka. While opinions vary regarding the early origins of the Chalukyas, the consensus among noted historians such as John K. D.C. Sarkar, Hans Raj, Sen, Kamath and Karmarkar as the founders of the empire at Badami were native to the modern Karnataka region. A theory that they were descendants of a 2nd century chieftain called Kandachaliki Remanaka, a feudatory of the Andhra Ikshvaku, was put forward. This, according to Kamath, has failed to explain the difference in lineage. The Kandachaliki feudatory called themselves Vashathiputras of the Hiranyakagotra. The Chalukyas, however, address themselves as Harithiputras of Manavyasagotra in their inscriptions, which is the same lineage as their early overlords, the Kadambas of Banavasia. This makes them descendants of the Kadambas. The Chalukyas took control of the territory formerly ruled by the Kadambas. A later record of Eastern Chalukyas mentions the northern origin theory and claims one ruler of Ayodhya came south, defeated the Pallavas and married a Pallava princess. She had a child called Vijayaditya who is claimed to be the Mlpkr's father. However, according to the historians K. Kamath and Maurice, claim it was a popular practice in the 11th century to link South Indian royal family lineage to a northern kingdom. The Badami Chalukya records themselves as silent with regards to the Ayodhya origin. While the northern origin theory has been dismissed by many historians, the epigraphist K. V. Ramesh has suggested that an earlier southern migration is a distinct possibility which needs examination. According to him, the complete absence of any inscriptional reference of their family connections to Ayodhya, and their subsequent Kannadiga identity may have been due to their earlier migration into present-day Karnataka region where they achieved successes, chieftains and kings. Hence, the place of origin of their ancestors may have been of no significance to the kings of the empire who may have considered themselves natives of the Kannada-speaking region. The writing of 12th century Kashmiri poet Bulhana suggests the Chalukya family belonged to the Shudra caste while other sources claim they were Kshatriyas. The historian Jan Hubin notes the Badami Chalukya inscriptions are in Kannada and Sanskrit. According to the historian N.L. Rao, their inscriptions call them Karnatas and their names use indigenous Kannada titles such as Priyagulam and Noduttagalvom. The names of some Chalukya princes end with the pure Kannada term Arasar. The Rashtrakuta inscriptions call the Chalukyas of Badami Karnatabala. It has been proposed by the historian S.C. Nondina that the word Chalukya originated from Salki or Chalky, which is a Kannada word for an agricultural implement. Historians D.R. Bhandarkar and Hohenla hold the view that Chalukyas were one of the ruling clans of Gurjaris, citing the name change of Lutta province to Gurjaratra during the reign. Bhandarkar explains that if the Chalukyas had not been Gurjars, it is inconceivable how that province could have named Gurjaratra when it was up till their advent known as Lutta. However, according to the scholar D.P. Dixit, the Chalukyas ruled over that part of country formerly known as Lutta and taken as Gurjaratra or Gujarat implied the Chalukyas made a change in the nomenclature because of their close association with the region. V.A. Smith and A.M.T. Jackson also endorsed the view that Chalukyas were a branch of famous Gurjar. Historical sources. Inscriptions in Sanskrit and Kannada are the main source of information about the Badami Chalukya history. Among them, the Badami cave inscriptions of Mangalesha, Kappa Arabata record of c. 700, Pedavada Guru inscription of Pulakshan II, the Kanchi Kailasanath temple inscription and Patadakal Virupaksha temple inscription of Vikramaditya II provide more evidence of the Chalukya language. The Badami cliff inscription of Pulakshan I, the Mahakuta pillar inscription of Mangalesha and the eye-hole inscription of Pulakshan II are examples of important Sanskrit inscriptions written in Old Kannada script. The reign of the Chalukyas saw the arrival of Kannada as the predominant language of inscriptions along with Sanskrit, in areas of the Indian peninsula outside what is known as Tamilaham. Several coins of the Badami Chalukyas with Kannada legends have been found. All this indicates that Kannada language flourished during this period. Travelogues of contemporary foreign travelers have provided useful information about the Chalukyan Empire. The Chinese traveler Xuanzang had visited the court of Pulakshan II. At the time of this visit, as mentioned in the eye-hole record, Pulakshan II had divided his empire into 3 Maharashtrakas or great provinces comprising 99,000 villages each. This empire possibly covered present-day Karnataka, Maharashtra and coastal Konkan. Xuanzang, impressed with the governance of the empire, observed that the benefits of king's efficient administration was felt far and wide. Later, Persian Emperor Khosrau II exchanged ambassadors with Pulakshan II. Legends. Court poets of the Western Chalukya dynasty of Kalyani narrate, once when Brahma, the creator, was engaged in the performance of the Sandhya rituals, Indra approached and beseeched him to create a hero who could put to an end the increasing evil on earth. On being thus requested, Brahma looked steadily into the Chalukya Jala, and out sprang thence a great warrior, the progenitor of the Chalukyas. The Chalukyas claimed to have been nursed by the Sakta Matrikash and were worshippers of many gods including Shiva, Vishnu, Chamundi, Surya, Kubra, Parvati, Vinayaka and Kartikeya. Some scholars connect the Chalukyas with the Solankish of Gujarat. According to a myth mentioned in later manuscripts of Prithviraj Razo, Solankish were born out of fire pit at Mount Abu. However, it has been reported that the story of Agni Kula is not mentioned at all in the original version of the Prithviraj Razo preserved in the fort library at Bikaner. According to the Nilagunda inscription of King Vikramaditya VI, the Chalukyas originally hailed from Ayodhya where 59 kings ruled, and later, 16 more of this family ruled from South India where they had migrated. This is repeated by his court poet Bulhana, who claims that the first member of the family, Chalukya, was so named as he was born in the hollow of the hands of god Brahma. In these circumstances, says Professor R. Sathyanathiah, it is best to take the Chalukyas as allied to the Gurjaris. According to a theory put forward by Lewis, the Chalukya were descendants of the Chalukya tribe of Iraq, and that their conflict with the Pallava of Kanchi was but a continuation of the conflict between ancient Chalukya and Parthians, the proposed ancestors of Pallavas. However, this theory has been rejected by Kamath as it seeks to build lineages based simply on similar-sounding clan names. Periods in Chalukya history. The Chalukyas ruled over the Deccan Plateau in India for over 600 years. During this period, they ruled as three closely related, but individual dynasties. These are the Chalukyas of Badami, who ruled between the 6th and the 8th century, and the two sibling dynasties, the Chalukyas of Kalyani, and the Chalukyas of Engi. Chalukyas of Badami in the 6th century, with the decline of the Gupta dynasty and their immediate successors in northern India. Major changes began to happen in the area south of the Vindhyas, the Deccan and Tamilaham. The age of small kingdoms had given way to large empires in this region. The Chalukya dynasty was established by Pulakshan I in 543. Pulakshan I took Vartupi under his control and made it his capital. Pulakshan I and his descendants are referred to as Chalukyas of Badami. They ruled over an empire that comprised the entire state of Karnataka and most of Andhra Pradesh in the Deccan. Pulakshan II, whose pre-coronation name was Eraya, commanded control over the entire Deccan and is perhaps the most well-known emperor of the Badami dynasty. He is considered one of the notable kings in Indian history. His queens were princes from the Alupa dynasty of South Kanara and the Western Ganga dynasty of Talakad, clans with whom the Chalukyas maintained close family and marital relationships. Pulakshan II extended the Chalukya Empire up to the northern extents of the Pallava kingdom and halted the southward march of Harsha by defeating him on the banks of the river Narmada. He then defeated the Vishnukundans in the southeastern Deccan. Pallava Narasimhavarman, however, reversed this victory in 642 by attacking and occupying Badami temporarily. It is presumed Pulakshan II, the great hero, died fighting. The Badami Chalukya dynasty went into a brief decline following the death of Pulakshan II due to internal feuds when Badami was occupied by the Pallavas for a period of 13 years. It recovered during the reign of Vikramaditya I, who succeeded in pushing the Pallavas out of Badami and restoring order to the empire. Vikramaditya I took the title Rajamala. The 37-year rule of Vijayaditya was a prosperous one and is known for prolific temple-building activity. The empire was its peak again during the rule of the illustrious Vikramaditya II, who is known not only for his repeated invasions of the territory of Tondimandalam and his subsequent victories over Pallava Nandivarman II, but also for his benevolence towards the people and the monuments of Kanchipuram, the Pallava capital. He thus avenged the earlier humiliation of the Chalukyas by the Pallavas and engraved a Kannada inscription on the victory pillar at the Kailasanatha temple. During his reign, Arab intruders of the Umayyad Caliphate invaded southern Gujarat, which was under Chalukya rule, but the Arabs were defeated and driven out by Pulakshan I, a Chalukya governor of Navsari. He later overran the other traditional kingdoms of Tamil country, the Pandyas, the Koles and the Cheras, in addition to subduing a Kalabra ruler. The last Chalukya king, Kirtivarman II, was overthrown by the Rashtrakuta of King Dantidurga in 753. At their peak, the Chalukyas ruled a vast empire stretching from the Kaveri in the south to the Narmada in the north. Chalukyas of Kalyani. The Chalukyas revived their fortunes in 973 after over 200 years of dormancy when much of the Deccan was under the rule of the Rashtrakutas. The genealogy of the kings of this empire is still debated. One theory, based on contemporary literary and inscriptional evidence plus the finding that the Western Chalukyas employed titles and names commonly used by the early Chalukyas, suggests that the Western Chalukya kings belong to the same family line as the illustrious Badami Chalukya dynasty of the 6th century, while other Western Chalukya inscriptional evidence indicates they were a distinct line unrelated to the early Chalukyas. Chalukya II, a Rashtrakuta feudatory ruling from Tardavadi 1000 overthrew Karka II, re-established the Chalukya rule in the Western Deccan and recovered most of the Chalukya Empire. Vikramaditya VI is widely considered the most notable ruler of the dynasty. Starting from the very beginning of his reign, which lasted 50 years, he abolished the original Saka era and established the Vikrama era. Most subsequent Chalukya inscriptions are dated in this new era. Vikramaditya VI was an ambitious and skilled military leader. Under his leadership, the Western Chalukyas were able to end the Chola influence over Vengi and become the dominant power in the Deccan. The Western Chalukya period was an important age in the development of Kannada literature and Sanskrit literature. They went into their final dissolution towards the end of the 12th century with the rise of the Hoysala Empire, the Pandyas, the Kakatiya and the Yadavas of Devagiri. Chalukyas of Vengi Pulakshan II conquered the eastern Deccan, corresponding to the coastal districts of modern Andhra Pradesh in 616, defeating the remnants of the Vishnu Kundina kingdom. He appointed his brother Tʃaːʰukjə Vishnuvardhana as viceroy in 621. Thus the eastern Chalukyas were originally of Kannada stock. After the death of Pulakshan II, the Vengi viceroyalty developed into an independent kingdom and included the region between Nellore and Visakhapatnam. After the decline of the Badami Chalukya Empire in the mid-8th century, territorial disputes flared up between the Rashtrakutas, the new rulers of the Western Deccan, and the Eastern Chalukyas. For much of the next 2 centuries, the Eastern Chalukyas had to accept subordination towards the Rashtrakutas. Apart from a rare military success such as the one by Vijayaditya II, it was only during the rule of Bhima I that these Chalukyas were able to celebrate a measure of independence. After the death of Bhima I, the Andhra region once again saw succession disputes and interference in Vengi affairs by the Rashtrakutas. The fortunes of the Eastern Chalukyas took a turn around 1000. Dhananava, the king, was killed in battle in 973 by the Telugu Chola king Bhima, who then imposed his rule over the region for 27 years. During this time, Dhananava's 2 sons took refuge in the Chola kingdom. Chola Bhima's invasion of Tondimandalam, a Chola territory, and his subsequent death on the battlefield opened up a new era in Chola Chalukya relations. Saktavarman I, the elder son of Dhananava, was crowned as the ruler of Vengi in 1000, though under the control of King Rajaraj of Chola I. This new relationship between the Cholas and the coastal Andhra kingdom was unacceptable to the Western Chalukyas, who had by then replaced the Rashtrakutas as the main power in the Western Deccan. The Western Chalukyas sought to brook the growing Chola influence in the Vengi region but were unsuccessful. Initially, the Eastern Chalukyas had encouraged Kannada language and literature, though, after a period of time, local factors took over and they gave importance to Telugu language. Telugu literature owes its growth to the Eastern Chalukyas.